I was standing there fixing spaghetti for lunch today, and I'm sitting here and I'm just, praying while I'm working, and what am I going to talk about tonight? And it's like the Bible just fell and hit me in the head and kind of gave me a little bit of a vague response, but said Nehemiah. I said, okay. I know Nehemiah rebuilt the wall, but what? Okay, so I've spent part of the afternoon reading the first 6 chapters of Nehemiah to figure out what message was meant for the church tonight. So I'm going to give you a little background. We're going to be in Nehemiah chapter 6. But the background of the first 5 chapters, to try to summarize, Nehemiah has gotten a report on the condition of the city of Jerusalem and the people who have been scattered abroad. He is serving as King Artaxerxes' cupbearer. Well, he's troubled in his heart, he's weeping, but he goes before the king, and the king can see on his face that he's sad and troubled. He said, what has you so troubled? You've never been this way in front of me before. So he asks him what's wrong, and Nehemiah tells him what's in his heart. He feels that God has called him to go rebuild the wall around Jerusalem. What he doesn't know is that God has already softened the heart of King Artaxerxes. And he says, basically to Nehemiah, ask for what you need. So he says, I'm not actually in the scripture yet, Brother Doverdale. I'm giving the background. I'm not in it. It's Nehemiah chapter 6 when we get there. Okay, I'm sorry. But so everything he asks for is given to him, including letters to get past all the governors and rulers on the other side of the river. He's given papers to get materials. And of course, as he gets there and he starts giving out his letters to the governors saying this is what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And they get a little upset about it because he's going to be taking part of their territory by rebuilding that wall. So one night he decides he's going to get up. He doesn't want all the king's people that have been sent with him following him around. So he gets up one night and he goes and he surveys the damage. He formulates a plan for the repairs, and he gets ready. And he sets the workers out in sections. Take care of this section right by your house. That'll make it that much faster. If you just take care of your section, there's enough people here, it'll get rebuilt. And at the same time, those rulers who are kind of a little upset, governors, they start messing with him. They start sending messengers over saying, man, you ain't doing right. You're just trying to rise up and rebel, blah, blah, blah. We're going to come in and take him out, So, not only has he got the workers working, he starts setting up defenses. Some of the servants are there just as defenders. A lot of the workers are working with one hand, and they're armed in the other. And during all of this is one of the big points. During all of this, Nehemiah has remembered his greatest resource, which is God. And he's been praying throughout these first 5 chapters of Nehemiah for guidance and for protection. Now, Nehemiah chapter 6, and it'll be the entire chapter, 19 verses. Now it came to pass when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arabian and the rest of our enemies heard that I had builded the wall, and that there was no breach left therein, though at that time I had not set up the doors upon the gates, that Sanballat and Geshem sent unto me, saying, Come, let us meet together in some one of the villages in the plain of Ono. Kind of a telling thing right there. Don't go to the plain of Ono. It ain't no good. But they thought to do me mischief, and I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease whilst I leave it and come down to you. Yet they sent unto me 4 times after this sort, and I answered them after the same manner. Then sent Sanballat his servant unto me, in like manner the 5th time, with an open letter in his hand, wherein was written, It is reported among the heathen, and Geshmu saith it, that thou and the Jews think to rebel, for which cause thou buildest the wall, that thou mayest be their king, according to these words. And thou hast also appointed prophets to preach of thee at Jerusalem, saying, There is a king in Judah. And now shall it be reported to the king according to these words. Come now therefore, and let us take counsel together. Then I sent unto him, saying, There are no such things done as thou sayest, but thou feignest them out of thine own heart. For they all made us afraid, saying, Their hands shall be weakened from the work, that it be not done. Now therefore, O God, strengthen my hands. All right, I'm going to stop there, because I don't want to lecture y'all the whole way through with just a scripture reading. But as we start out in chapter 6, we're told that at the time this is being written, the wall is done. Of course, the gates have not been set on the hinges yet. But Sanballat has sent to him a few times, and, this applies to us still. We need to be prepared for a time, if we haven't already experienced it, when someone or something will try to hinder you from what God has called you to do. And believe me, it happens more often than we care to realize or to admit, but someone or something will get in the way. Especially if you're a leader or in charge of a ministry. Because if you start at the top, the rest of them fall. An army without leaders is nothing. If you can be called away from the work that you've been called to, the work will cease altogether. What we need to remember is who has called us to our work and for whom we're doing our work. That way we can stay focused and know exactly where we should be. And Sanballat has also sent his servant after the 4th time that Nehemiah has refused to meet with a different message this time to try to hinder Nehemiah. Instead of just trying to slow him down by leaving to come to a meeting or just kind of distracting him from the work, he comes with a letter, for lack of a better term, a tattletale letter to the king, saying, this man is trying to rebel. He's trying to get the people of Jerusalem to rebel against you, king. He's trying to take over. He's trying to make himself a king in Judah. He's even setting people up out in the community to praise him, to preach that he is the new king in Judah. So unless you come on out here and meet with us and we come to a little agreement, we're going to send this letter to the king. But Nehemiah responds and basically says, you know what? I'm going to call you on your lies. They've tried to scare everyone, especially by saying that the workers they've got to be tired. They're working with one hand and holding a spear or a sword with the other. And the wall's not even finished. So they're still susceptible. We're going to scare them into stopping. We don't want that wall built, then we can't lay any claim to any of this. But at the end of that passage, up to verse 9, that last little sentence in there, O God, strengthen my hands. Nehemiah remembered to stop and pray. But he wasn't just praying for his hands. I don't believe he was just praying for his hands to be strong. He was praying for his resolve to be strengthened to complete the work that God had called him to do, and to be able to lead the people in that task. All right, now back to verse 10, and we'll read on down some. Afterward, I came to the house of Shemaiah, the son of Deliah, the son of Mehetabeel, who was shut up, and he said, "Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple, and let us shut the doors of the temple, for they will come to slay thee. Yea, in the night will they come to slay thee." And I said, "Should such a man as I flee? And who is there that, being as I am, would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. And lo, I perceived that God had not sent him, but that he pronounced this prophecy against me, for Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. Therefore was he hired, that I should be afraid, and to do so and sin, and that they might have matter for an evil report, that they might reproach me." So Shemaiah, in some of the commentaries and research that I did, he's a prophet, or he may have been a priest, but he was associated with the temple and the church work. But he's not acting on behalf of God right here. He's trying to get Nehemiah to hide in the temple. Just come in here and hide. And again, if Nehemiah is hiding, there's no one to lead the workers. So the wall will stop being built. But Nehemiah doesn't, he's there for a minute and he thinks about it and he says, you know what? What kind of man am I that I should be hiding in the temple to save my life? These men are making false accusations anyway. I need to do what God's called me to do. And God reveals to him that that Shemaiah has been hired by these men to scare him again. Again, we have to remember our calling and who we've been called of. But they're ready to give that false report. It's also unlawful for Nehemiah to occupy the temple. He's not a priest, so it's unlawful for him to just go in there and hide and to hang out there and stay. But he could have met his demise in the temple with Shemaiah if he's been hired by these other people anyway. Back to verse 14 real quick. "My God, think thou upon Tobiah and Sanballat according to these works, and on the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets that would have put me in fear." He's praying again. Now, he's not praying for God to smite these guys, because he knows that that's not his place. "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." It's not up to him. But he knows that we're judged by what we do. We're judged by our works. So he's just assuring himself in his own mind that, you know what, these guys are going to keep trying this. I need to quit worrying about it. God's going to take care of them. I just don't even need to entertain these guys. Now, verse 15. And this one is interesting. "So the wall was finished in the 25th day of the month, Elul, in 52 days. 52 days, the walls of Jerusalem have been rebuilt, and the gates have been hung." Let's put that in a little bit of perspective. We've seen some of these companies here lately throw up some brand new houses in a couple days. Just from working in construction, some of those I would not even live in, just to let you know that. There are some corners that are cut just for the sake of getting it done and getting paid. But this is a miracle in and of itself. 52 days to rebuild this wall. the wall would have been about 2.5 miles long. And this is just from my research. If anybody's got any other research, we'll talk about it afterwards. But the walls were not just these 8-foot privacy fences around our houses nowadays. The walls would be about 40 feet high, because you need to have people up there in the watchtowers to be able to see what's coming. Which, along with that, the watchtowers, there was about 34 of them, approximately. But this 2.5 miles of wall, 40 feet high, the walls were not just 2x6s, 2x8s. The walls are 8 feet thick. The whole point of a wall is defense. That wall needs to be thick so that you can't just, like some of these other houses, throw a rock through the wall. Siding, insulation board, a little bit of insulation, and sheetrock. That's what some of the houses have been made. But these walls are built for defense, for the people of God to be able to withstand attacks. This is how we need to build the walls around ourselves and our hearts. This is how we need to build the walls around our faith. Between August and September, a little? Okay. I don't have that reference in here, but just talking about preparation. I found out right after service this morning that I was going to be filling in again tonight. And I'm sure Brother Mickey can attest to this. Sometimes what you get out in just a few hours, just think if you had a whole, 3 or 4 days to be able to pull out of there. And again, I'm not the most learned scholar. I don't know all the Greek and everything of that, but just being able to figure this out. So it's the middle of summer, or at least it would be here for us. If it's the middle of summer and having to build 2.5 miles of wall, 8 feet thick, 40 feet high, 34 watchtowers, and 8 gates that were mentioned in chapter 3, I know that's a good reason to retire. I don't think I'd want to do that. Now, again, this is not everybody in the town. Some of the people in the town are still nobles, rulers. They don't really want a part of this. But they did it in 52 days. Even in today's society, not saying that it couldn't be done in 52 days, but it's still a feat to be done. We have, a lot more technology. Of course, and again, we've got a lot more regulations too, so it would probably negate the technology. But they would not have been able to do it had it not been for God. Because God had to keep these guys out here on the outside of town, keep them occupied with let's send him a letter. Let's see if we can get him to come out. If they'd have just got all together and said, you know what, we might just go ahead and attack, there wouldn't have been no wall to slow them down. Now, the people would have been there, but the wall wouldn't have slowed them down. So God's at work in this whole thing. And that's why Nehemiah continues to go back in prayer. In verse 16, and it came to pass that when all our enemies heard thereof, and all the heathen that were about us saw these things, they were much cast down in their eyes, for they perceived that this work was wrought of our God. Not only did Nehemiah and the people realize that God had to be with them for this, the people on the outside said, well, there's no way they could have done that without some kind of supernatural help. We're not going to be able to do everything that we do without some kind of help from God. Actually, I take that back. We won't be able to do anything if we don't first know that that's what God has called us to do and God equips us. One of the biggest things that I've been told for many, many years is it's not about our ability to do something. It's about our availability. If you're available, God will take care of the rest. but you got to be willing to listen when he calls. Talking about that, Moses was available. Moses made a lot of excuses. After about the third excuse, God was getting a little peeved because his third excuse was, hey, I'm slow of speech. Can you send somebody in my place to go talk to Pharaoh? He said, I've already told you that I'll bless your mouth. I will let the words come out of your mouth. Yeah, I sure would hope I wish you'd send somebody else over here. He said, well, you know what? Your brother Aaron's coming. But you ain't getting out of it altogether. You're going to tell Aaron what to say, and then Aaron's going to say it to Pharaoh. No matter what we do, we can run and jump on a boat and go to Tarshish, trying to outrun God as far as instead of going to Nineveh. Of course, then he could bring up a great storm, have us thrown overboard, and the fish bring us back. You can run all you want to. You can run. This right here I ran for about 17 years. 17 years I ran, and when you run from God, you have no peace in your heart. There's always going to be that sinking feeling in the back that I think there was something I should have been doing. And most of the time it's not, I think I should have been doing this. It's most of the time you know exactly what part you're running from. Whether it be out of fear, whether it be out of that's not fitting into my plans, you're never going to have any peace with it. Nehemiah is at peace because he knows that he's doing what he's been called to do. Now that we're done chasing the rabbit. Verse 17. Moreover, in those days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and the letters of Tobiah came unto them. So not only do we have Tobiah, Sanballat, and Geshem on the outside, we got some people inside the city who are loyal to these guys out there, and so they're passing information back and forth. (18) says, for there were many in Judah sworn unto him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Arah, and his son Johanan had taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah. Now again, we're name dropping here. We're loyal to this guy because he's connected in these places right here. Again, connections don't necessarily get you where you need to be with God. I'll take that back. Connections won't get you where you need to be with God. And also they reported his good deeds before me and uttered my words to him, and Tobiah sent letters to put me in fear. So not only do we got trouble outside the gate, now we got people inside the gate stirring up trouble in here by feeding stuff to the people out there. And then we're going to let some of those letters come back in, and we're just going to stir up in the pot. Churches are not immune from it. This right here, talking about the children of Israel, take that and apply it to the people of God today. Ezra's already rebuilt the temple. Nehemiah came and rebuilt the wall. We've got to stand watch. For the devil is a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. If we're going to leave the gates wide open to anything coming in, if we're not going to have a wall around our faith, a wall around our people, around our hearts, nothing's going to slow him down. We've got to make sure the wall is built to God's standard and steady. You want to know how to do that? Pray it. Pray about it. Pray for that hedge of protection. You can't receive it if you don't ask for it. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. But just remember, even after your work is done, you still have people on the outside. Even if you're in the middle of the work and they're trying to stop it, after it's done, don't think that you're out of the woods. Because after you've done it, they're still coming around trying to find something. They're trying to nitpick. They're trying to find something. They kept trying to scare Nehemiah. Pray. Guard your hearts. Guard your communication with God. Always stand watch for the enemy on the outside the walls. But be vigilant for the enemy within. And I don't mean that the enemy, an enemy within the church or anything like that. The enemy comes in different forms. Because the enemy here is trying to take Nehemiah's focus away. It can come in the form of ourselves doubting that God has called us to do this. Fear of rejection and things like that. We're letting ourselves kind of tear down and get ourselves off focus. Family and friends can keep us busy, so we're not completing the tasks that God has for us. Sometimes other church ministries than the ones we're to take care of. Well, can you help out over here? Well, to be honest, you need to pour everything you've got into the ministries that you've been given. If you spread yourself too thin, you'll burn out. You'll walk away. You'll stay at home. Been there. I've been there. I've walked away. But it was of my own doings. I lost my focus. To prevent this, surround yourselves with fellow believers that can do what Proverbs 27:17 says. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Make sure you've got somebody you can call within the church, another Christian, so that you can keep that fellowship going. It's not just about Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night. You need that fellowship often. But when you do get down, remember Philippians 4:13. It says, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. When you get discouraged, call on those friends, those Christians, and just remember you can do it. It may not always be easy, but if God's called you to do it, God's going to provide a way. God's going to make sure you've got everything you need. Be obedient and answer the call.